So good morning, everyone, and it's really a pleasure to join all of you in this senior vote forum. Jody, thank you for just really setting the foundation for the day and how we should be thinking about this election. You're absolutely right. In so many ways, our world has been just turned upside down. But at the same time, we also know just what's at stake with this election. And so it's very important that we not only show up, that we are really just so mindful of the work that lies ahead of us. And what I do today is to talk about the state of California and the today. But I want to answer the fundamental question about why seniors need to vote at all levels of our elections. And Jody alluded to some things that are at stake at the federal level, certainly at the state level. We're going to have some fiscal challenges, for the next handful of years to come. And we want to be sure that we are protecting all of our communities who are just been most disproportionately affected by not just the COVID-19 pandemic, but also the recession. Wildfires, throughout all of California, as well as looking at from this recession, the economy is everyone and opportunities for all communities. In terms of a lot of reflection and all of you as well, and particularly with Jessica Ginsburg on Friday. When I think about, just all of the rights that we are just every single election, every single day through our activism are trying to protect. This is what this election is about. It's almost like our democracy is under attack. And, it's hard to think that when we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote, the ratification of the 19th Amendment this year, when we continue to do the good work and get into the good trouble that the late John Lewis has encouraged us to do, who was such a stalwart in terms of really getting the Voting Rights Act enacted in 1965, which really was the time that finally gave everyone, including women of color, the ability to vote even after the 19th Amendment was ratified. When I think about all that, it makes me think about just how sacred the right to vote is and how that right could be so easily taken away. And there are forces in play right now that are attempting to do just that. Voter suppression is alive and well in this election. And this is not even the Russian interference. This is just policies that we're going to see employed in different states across this country. I hope not to see any of it here in California. I know that the parties are really being very vigilant about being sure that everyone who's eligible to vote is able to cast their vote safely and to have their vote counted. So this is really a sacred time in terms of looking at that right to vote and being sure that we are showing up, that we know the importance of the vote, and that this is the right that is so fundamental to all other rights in terms of getting the people who represent us elected, getting our issues really represented in terms of where we stand on them, and also really casting that vote that represents not only what's in our best interest, but in the best interest of those who aren't able to vote, our children, some of our loved ones who physically aren't able to vote, so many of our immigrant brothers and sisters who don't have the ability to vote yet. So this vote really means a lot. And so I just think this is the year to really reflect upon those things, because it is so tenable in terms of all of the forces that are coming at us to try to take away that right. We are very blessed to be here in California. And I have to say that as much as people look to California as a leader all over the world, not just across this nation, about how we deal with the most daunting of challenges, California is being tested for sure. And I want to just applaud Governor Newsom and the leadership he's been providing, and certainly just when we looked at the COVID-19 pandemic having started, something that no part of the world has ever experienced. It's a new virus, it's a novel coronavirus, as they call it, and every day we're learning something new about it. But what he knew to do was to try to, first and foremost, keep Californians healthy and safe. And that's what we are continuing to do. But when I look at just what happened right on the heels of the shutdown and the shelter-in-place orders and the public health directives, our economy essentially just slowed to a halt. This is a pandemic that is affecting every single sector of our economy, and rebuilding it will mean that we have to be sure that not only are workers going to continue to be healthy and safe as we rebuild the economy, that customers are protected, that our businesses are taking the precautions that they need to take. And this has been happening, unfortunately, in fits and starts as we continue to see cases. They're starting to level off a bit, but we still are seeing increasing deaths from the virus here in California. But what I will say in terms of what California did over the last 10 years, and I want to thank Governor Jerry Brown because it was really his discipline about building historic reserves in California that allowed us to really confront this pandemic from a point of strength, that we had reserves to be able to continue to pay the bills for California before the end of the last fiscal year and not have to go to the market to borrow. And we feel confident that that will likely be the case this coming fiscal year as well. But what these reserves have done is to essentially keep some of the most critical services in place that could have been much more heavily affected in terms of cuts. And this is what Governor Newsom and the legislature were able to do in their budget that was enacted at the end of June, is that most of our safety net programs have remained in place. The rainy day fund that the voters enacted, we did dip into that to balance the budget. We had an education, we had an education reserve also that we tapped into, that we knew when times got bad that we were going to need that extra money. So again, Governor Brown, the legislature, had the foresight to see that. Our Health and Human Services Safety Net Reserve completely dipped into that because we know that during this time we have more people who are in need of just public assistance and really relying on the safety net, Medi-Cal for healthcare, looking at some of the other public programs to really assist them for food security and certainly for housing security as well. And when I look at the revenues coming into the state, which is my charge every day, we are looking at just whether revenues are going to meet the budget projections. So far in these first few months of the new fiscal year, they've exceeded budget projections, but there's a story to be told there. And most of that is from increased income tax revenues above the projections, personal income tax revenue. And the story to tell there is that the pandemic and the recession is not hitting everybody equally, that those who are in the upper income earning brackets are actually doing okay. And they are really the bulk of what we're seeing in terms of increased personal income taxes. Now, we've had, on the flip side of that, close to 10 million Californians who've applied for unemployment insurance. And so, yeah, we just see this duality of what's happening with the economy. But it is also the duality of what we're seeing, frankly, in the stock market, that those who are able to invest in those stocks that are doing well on the market now, and it's very concentrated. It's what I call the stay-at-home stocks. So it's the Googles and the Apples, and it's heavily concentrated in those companies that are showing great returns because all of us are relying on those companies. But to have that kind of concentration in the market is generally not a healthy thing going forward because we want more diversity in terms of what is showing that an economy is actually performing well. And we also know that even though the stock market is doing well, that I think any one of us can just walk on our main streets and just see that almost every other storefront is shuttered. That the Main Street economy is not reflective of what the stock market is telling us. And so what we have here is unemployment that continues to be pretty severe and significant. The Department of Finance believes that it's going to be, probably about half a decade before we recover fully the jobs that we lost prior to the pandemic. We have GDP nationally that this last quarter was the biggest GDP drop that we've seen since GDP has been recorded beginning around World War II. So, we see these kind of rosy pictures, but we know that that's not the reality of what we're experiencing. Certainly not in our community, certainly not with our loved ones, and certainly not with ourselves about what is happening with this pandemic and the recession. But what I will say is that, California continues to have just a lot of strength with respect to our rating agencies have really rated us high because we have had these historic reserves socked away, and we'll probably not have to do any external borrowing even in this next fiscal year. So we will continue to monitor that situation. We know that as I said, personal income taxes continue to perform. The rainy day fund, we had put some socked a lot of money away from that as well. Where I really see this is on my watch with respect to CalPERS and CalSTRS, the public pension funds, because both funds actually brought in at the end of June positive returns, not the 7% that both funds assume that we would get, but we'll take a positive return, frankly, because the markets just took such a dip right after the pandemic. But it showed us that the strategies that we'd put in place after the 2008 Great Recession really are working. We have risk mitigation strategies that have really shielded us from some of the deep drops that we saw after the Great Recession started in 2008. We also have really good liquidity that we wanted to be sure we insured, so we are still able to pay all the benefits to all of our retirees and beneficiaries, and that will continue to be the case. And we are going to continue to monitor the market and just keep rebalancing the portfolio to continue to give it the sustainability and the resilience that it needs to really get through these times that are quite uncertain. And then, what I will say too is that, the governor has a number of initiatives that really are looking at, the future of California, even before this pandemic started, but probably even more so now, as we think about how do we gird California to become more resilient. How do we rebuild our economy so that we can hopefully ensure economic prosperity for all? And I just want to mention two initiatives that he's involved in that I've had a part in. One is the Future of Work Commission that he began last September that has brought together a group of private sector business, labor, state government officials, and so many of the communities that are going to be affected with respect to how this economy is going to continue to be a strong economy going forward. And one of the areas that we really are focused on that Future of Work Commission is the fact that California's population is aging, that we have our needs are going to be great with respect to how we really serve our older adult population. And that's not to say it's all on public programs. We have, frankly, a lot of older adults who are bless them, are living longer, but many of them are staying active and working longer because of just the cost of living here in California and the need to continue to be able to get by. But it is an area that we are very, very focused on with respect to the needs of older adults as it relates to dealing with our aging and long-term care types of issues. And I think we've heard Joe Biden talk about this, and certainly will be a focus here in California in the next several years, and that is how do we look at the care sector as really being a viable and much more professionalized, and it will be a growing need for many of our older adult populations, as well as those who are loved ones who are living with disabilities and children, for that matter, in terms of childcare. But how do we look at this care sector as really being a prominent part of our economy, where we can actually see that many of those who are working in this sector can be viable in terms of sustaining a healthy living wage, in terms of how we incorporate technology in the work that they do and how they serve their loved ones and their patients. Looking at how we just continue to professionalize this sector, because we know that if we do that and focus on the role of the community colleges that are located throughout the state, that there's a way to actually develop a workforce around this that could really help stimulate the economy going forward. The second part of the aspect of the Future of Work Commission is just looking at work with respect to how do we build a new social contract with workers. And by that, I mean anybody who works in California ought to be able to earn enough to where they are not experiencing housing insecurity or food insecurity, have health care, and be able to have the dignity of a life where it is not just going from paycheck to paycheck. And so the social contract is going to be very, very much focused on looking at how do we begin to look at work across a number of sectors, and we're going to be particularly focused on the service sectors, because these are the sectors that took the biggest hit during this pandemic-induced recession. Those in the hospitality industry, those in retail, and by the way, many of which don't have a choice but to still go to work if they still have their job, because they are considered frontline essential services. And so, how do we?
Wrapping up? Do you have we need to start wrapping.
Yeah. Okay, I will. And so that's just what's on the horizon with respect to not just looking at how we're going to balance our budget every year, but how do we begin to look at rebuilding this economy to where we can put some resilience into the economy, that we can put people back to work in industries that we know are going to be in demand going forward. And also, how do we really uplift the dignity of work for all Californians so that, as I said, they're not having to face such economic insecurity going forward. So let me end by saying this. The senior, thank you for doing these senior vote forms. They are always so informative, and there's a lot on the ballot. And what I will say is this. If we focus on what is happening here locally, I know everybody's focused on the top of the ticket, president on down, but I have to say we have so many great candidates who are running locally, but more importantly, the issues that we're going to be dealing with in California, I think are really going to be bringing people out to vote. And if we can increase the turnout here and really help elevate the turnout here in California, we will be fine with respect to the presidential election. And the senior vote has always been a strong electorate. It has always been a reliable electorate. And what I'm going to just challenge each of you to do is just to be sure that we are doing everything we can to turn out everyone we know, all of our friends, all of our colleagues, to just show that this is a part of the electorate that will not be taken for granted, will not be subject to voter suppression, and that this is a population that still cares very much about our democracy and the future of our state and our country. So Joe, with that, I think I'll stop, and if there is time for questions, great. If not, I just want to say thank you for doing these forums. They're important, and let's go just show what this community is about, because you've done it every single election, and this election of our lifetime, let's lift that up even more.